Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Beneath the hush of forest canopies, where leaves flutter like breath held in sleep, the soil below holds more than roots. It holds memory. It holds listening. In the dark hours when the sun has folded itself behind the earth, and only the hush of insects and the sigh of wind remain, something ancient begins. Trees do not close their eyes, but they rest. And in that resting they breathe, not like lungs, but like tides. They breathe with their roots, with their bark, with the tiny mouths that dot the undersides of their leaves. They do not pull in oxygen as we do. Their rhythm is reversed, and it unfolds slowly under the silver gaze of the moon. At night, when photosynthesis sleeps, another dance begins. Roots reach deeper, not just into the ground, but into the water-laced veins of the earth, drawing nutrients, drawing life. This is not a frantic hunger. It is patient, like moonlight pooling on moss. Trees breathe not with haste, but with understanding. Carbon dioxide, once pulled from the air during the day, becomes part of the story now hidden in the dark. Some of it is returned, some is shared. Some is stored in silent chambers made of cellulose and time. What we see above, the branches and green, are only half the tree. Beneath, hidden and sprawling like the mind beneath a quiet face, the roots carry on an unseen conversation. They speak in pulses, in slow chemical waves that move not in seconds but in hours. Each root hair, finer than the silk of a spider's leg, reaches through the damp dark in search of what the tree needs. But it is not just for itself. Trees are not islands. They are members of something older than community. They are part of a network, a woven forest family, joined not just by proximity but by communication. Scientists now understand that beneath many forests lies a mycorrhizal web, a fungal network that threads from tree to tree like neural pathways in the soil. These fungi, fine as mist, link one tree's roots to another's, and through them trees share signals, nutrients, even warnings. When one is wounded or sick, others may send aid. And at night, when the distractions of sunlight fade, this network is alive with traffic. Not in noise, not in light, but in the invisible traffic of carbon and water, nitrogen and quiet. The moon watches all this, not with heat, but with attention. Its light does not feed trees, but it guides rhythms, circadian pulses that echo through the forest like a heartbeat beneath bark. Some plants open at night, some flowers bloom only in the cool blue of moonlight. The moon, though distant, speaks to the earth's timing. It tugs on oceans and whispers to sap. Trees, though we see them as still, are listening. And stillness is not silence, it is fullness. Under the stars, trees shift their water upward, their sap thickening or thinning in response to temperature and pull. Some species, like the tamarack, pulse more at night, lifting water not for leaves, for those have closed their pores, but for repair. Night is when wounds are sealed, when breaths and roots deepen. In the language of biology, this is nocturnal hydraulic redistribution. But in the language of the forest, it is simply the way they sleep and rise, without moving. If you could place your ear to the ground in the middle of a forest night, and if your hearing were not just sharp but attuned to other frequencies, you might sense it. The soft sigh of moisture drawn through wood, the chemical murmur of calcium signaling across cells. It is a music of slowness, and it never stops. The night is not an off switch for forests. It is a different mode, a deeper voice. Even the air changes in the forest after sunset. Cooler, damper, it sinks into hollows and curls around trunks. In this heavy air, scents travel more clearly. The breath of wet leaves, the perfume of decaying bark, the metallic hint of stone. Trees detect this too. Some open their stomata, the tiny pores under leaves, wider at night in humid regions, to take in carbon dioxide while reducing water loss. This inverse breathing, so unlike our own, keeps them alive in places where days are too dry to risk gas exchange. You can almost feel this in your own body if you sit still enough among the trees. Your heartbeat slows, your breath finds rhythm with the crickets. You're not imagining the piece of it, you are aligning with it. Trees are not fast thinkers, but they are constant. They measure time in decades, centuries, and every breath they take in moonlight is part of that long memory. In tropical rainforests, where day and night balance evenly, trees have evolved to perform different tasks depending on the hour. Their inner chemistry switches modes. Enzymes that build sugars in the light retire at dusk, and nighttime enzymes awaken to manage the processing and distribution of energy. It's a quiet relay, not a factory shutting down, but a lantern passed from one hand to another, always glowing. The moon does not feed trees, but some species still follow its rhythm. The mangrove, rooted in the brackish edges of sea and land, times its seed released to the tides, pulled by the moon's hand. The moon, in turn, is in conversation with gravity, with the earth's own breath, and so the forest breathes with the sky, with the sea, and with you. To sit beneath a tree at night is to witness a different kind of world. It is not asleep, but changed. The rustle of a nocturnal mammal, the stir of an owl's wing, the creak of a branch not from wind but from shifting pressure, these are part of the night's respiration. All of it flows around the trees and through them. The next time you walk through woods under moonlight, pause, breathe with the trees. Not the deep breath of effort or the sigh of exhaustion, but the simple in and out of being, the breath you forget you're taking. They are doing the same, slowly, faithfully, whispering through the dark with roots that stretch like arms not to grab, but to hold. And in that holding, the forest remembers the moon. Now imagine drifting deeper into the forest, past the bark and the dew and the moss-covered hush, into the very breath of the trees. If the first layer of night was about stillness, this one is about connection. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from silence, but from things so deeply linked they don't need to speak aloud. Beneath the surface, trees are passing messages, slow and invisible, like steam rising from warm ground in morning fog. It is not magic, though it feels that way. It is chemistry, biology, and memory working together. These messages are made of carbon compounds, enzymes, and electric signals sent through water and tissue. But to the trees, it is simply how they stay in touch. Picture the fine threads of the mycorrhizal network now not as roots, but as fingers laced between neighbours. Trees of one species may reach out to entirely different kinds, sharing not just nutrients but alarm. If one tree is under attack by insects or a disease, it releases signals, hints of its struggle. Nearby trees detect this and begin to ready themselves, thickening bark, changing their internal chemistry. This warning system, slow and thoughtful, can span great distances. Some scientists call these networks the wood wide web, and although it is clever, the metaphor is still too fast, too modern. The forest speaks in hours, not seconds, in rhythms, not pings, and night is when it listens most carefully. In these hours, when the sun's pressure is lifted, the forest breathes inward. Moisture from the day begins to settle. Water evaporates less. Trees, once cautious of losing precious droplets to the heat, now ease open their pores. They reach not upward to the sky, but downward, drawing strength from the soil and companionship from one another. Trees in dry regions may even reverse their flow of water at night, moving it downward to redistribute what was gathered in the canopy to the thirsty roots below. This helps nourish parts of themselves that otherwise might wither. It is generosity, yes, but also strategy. A quiet optimization carried out without instruction or design. If you stand among trees during these hours, you will feel it in your chest, even if you can't name it. The air is richer, heavier perhaps, but full. Trees exhale not noise but substance. Carbon dioxide trickles into the air again after its daytime capture. Some of it rises slowly, drifting toward the canopy and out into the open. But some lingers near the forest floor, giving life to creatures that stir only after sunset. Moths, beetles, frogs, and foxes, all of them share this breath. It is not just that trees live in their ecosystems, they shape them, they write the air. Now shift your thoughts underground again, to the faint electrical pulses moving through a tree's body. These signals, called action potentials, are like whispers in the dark. They are the same kind of pulse that moves through human nerves, though far slower and softer. In trees, these signals move not to direct action, but to signal change, wounds, heat, drought, the touch of a climbing vine. Night gives them room to respond, to reallocate energy, to focus on healing and rebalancing. It is not repair as we understand it, with tools or stitches, but it is no less real. A tree under moonlight is a body recalibrating its breath. The rhythm of tree life is guided by clocks. These are not made of gears or batteries, but of genes and feedback loops, a circadian cycle written in chloroplasts and cell walls. These clocks know when to open and close pores, when to move sugars, when to rest. Even seedlings grown in total darkness keep a rhythm. It is internal, written in the language of evolution. But the moon plays a role too. Lunar cycles affect more than tides. Some plants grow slightly differently depending on the moon's phase. In ancient times, farmers watched the moon to guide their planting not out of superstition, but because these rhythms were felt, even if not fully understood. There is something called root pressure, and it builds at night. During the day, water mostly moves through trees by transpiration, the pull of evaporation from leaves, but at night this force weakens and root pressure rises instead, pushing water upward from the soil through xylem vessels. It is like the tree is quietly refilling itself cell by cell. Some trees, like maple, rely on these shifts to prepare for the season's flow. Without this nightly refilling, their lifeblood would stall. It is the slow work of balance played out drop by drop beneath the stars. Some species also use night to change how they store and use energy. Crassulacean acid metabolism, or CAM, is a clever adaptation used by desert plants, where they open their pores only at night to take in carbon dioxide and then store it until daylight returns. This way they avoid losing precious water during hot sunlit hours. Though not common in towering forests, this adaptation speaks to the versatility of life's breath. To breathe with the moon is to adapt, to listen, to choose the slow over the swift. And then there's the scent of the forest at night. It shifts. Compounds called volatile organic chemicals, released by bark, leaves and soil, change with temperature and light. Some trees release more at night to communicate with pollinators that only fly after dusk. The moonflowers blooming in twilight do not wait for bees. They wait for moths, for bats, for wind. The whole forest becomes a symphony of quiet offerings. Not loud, not boastful, just open. So much of science is seen through the lens of sunlight. Photosynthesis, growth, flowering, all are measured by daylight. But night holds a wisdom all its own. It is a time for inward motion, for deepening rather than reaching. The forest does not sleep in the way animals do, but it slows, it rests, and in that rest it gathers strength. Its breath is not a break, but a turn inward, a listening. Now look again at a forest under the moon. Each tree is still, but inside it is alive with memory and action. Its roots are touching others. Its signals are shifting, its water is rising and falling like a tide under bark. It is breathing not just for itself, but for everything that walks, flies, or curls beneath its branches. This is the respiration of the night, quiet, unseen, and deeply shared. You can feel it if you try, not just in your lungs, but in the way your body softens when you're near them, the way your shoulders fall, the way your thoughts slow just a little. The trees are not just breathing, they are inviting you to breathe with them, to pause, to listen, to remember that life does not need to shine to be full, that darkness is not emptiness but depth, that the night is not the end but another kind of beginning. And beneath it all, in roots that whisper and soil that remembers, the trees continue their ancient work. Quiet as moonlight, patient as sleep, breathing in time with the stars. Now let the night stretch toward its quietest hours, when even the wind slows, and the forest seems to rest on the edge of dreaming. This is the final breath before dawn, a time not of silence, but of soft gathering. Trees, in their patient rhythm, have drawn from the soil, exchanged messages in the dark, and now prepare to shift once more as light begins to stir behind the hills. But before the sun returns, the forest finishes its night work, completing a cycle as old as breath itself. In these last hours, the forest's breath deepens. Sap, warm from the slow push of root pressure, settles into its places. Moisture redistributes. The roots, now swollen with water and minerals, ease their grip on the earth. They've done their work, and now they rest, holding in their long bodies the memory of every mineral touched, every drop tasted. Above, in the canopy, the leaves do not yet awaken, but they sense the shift. The tiny pores on their undersides, closed or only half open through the night, begin to prepare for day. Chloroplasts, like green lanterns, stir in the cells. Photosynthesis is not yet active, but the forest is stretching towards it, like a body rising from a dream. Trees do not rush. They do not panic. They rise slowly, with purpose shaped by thousands of seasons. As humans, we often forget that there is wisdom in slowness, in breathing without urgency. But trees have always known. They do not chase the sun. They meet it, ready, because the night has made them full again. In those unseen hours, they have drawn not just water and nutrients, but connection, renewal, and quiet. They have healed tiny wounds, realigned their flow, shared what was needed with the trees beside them. Now, as light begins to touch the uppermost branches, they are ready again to transform. And transformation begins not in leaves, but in time itself. The circadian rhythm held in each tree's cells begins to tilt toward light. Internal clocks, tuned not just to sun and moon, but to memory and chemical rhythm shift gear. Enzymes that rested are reactivated. Hormones move. The tree does not think, but it knows. It knows the shape of the day before it has arrived, just as it knew the song of the night before darkness fell. This wisdom is not mystical. It is molecular. It is written in loops of DNA, in feedback pathways of calcium and potassium, in the slow electric hum of cellular membranes. But it is also poetic because it is precise and mysterious at once. Trees wake not all at once but in layers, from root to canopy. The dawn climbs them slowly like a tide, and they open in reply. This slow unfolding is as much part of their breath as the rush of oxygen we see in daylight. And here, just before the first birds sing, comes one of the forest's quietest miracles. The water that was drawn by roots now rises gently in the trunk, not pulled by leaves yet, but nudged by pressure and temperature. This pre-dawn ascent is the tree's way of greeting the coming light. It prepares the vessels, clears the paths so that, when the sun returns, energy can flow without resistance. This is how a tree says, "I am ready to begin again." Not all trees respond in the same way. Some, especially those in temperate zones, remain very still until sunlight warms their bark. Others, in more humid regions, begin movement earlier. But all follow a pattern, and in every species there is an ending to the night's breath, a moment of pause before the inhale of day. The forest holds its breath, almost imperceptibly, as if recognizing the beauty of transition, not clinging to the night, but honoring it. If you were to walk among the trees at this hour, you might feel something you can't name, a kind of deep exhale, as though the land itself were letting go of the dark. The air is cooler still, touched by dew. Insects fall silent or shift to new rhythms. Light filters softly through leaves, brushing the ground in pale gold-edged shadows. The forest doesn't rush toward noise. It wakes like someone remembering a dream, slowly, softly, with reverence. The night's respiration has done more than feed the trees. It has maintained the balance of ecosystems, supported creatures that thrive in shadow, cooled the forest floor, restored the soil's quiet thirst. It has told time without a clock. It has breathed not just for the forest, but for every life that leans on that breath. Moths, moss, mushrooms, owls, ferns, and the people. And now, as the first real light touches bark and leaf, the forest does not forget the night. It carries it forward. The water now lifting to leaves was shaped in the dark. The sugars that will form by sunlight were made possible by the rest gathered in stillness. Day is not a beginning, but a continuation. The breath of the forest is not cut into day and night, but woven across both like a tide that turns and turns again. You may think the night was quiet, but it was full, and in that fullness, the trees have grown, not taller perhaps, but deeper. They have remembered their place, shared their gifts, spoken in slow chemicals and long silences. They have read the moon's silver light like a letter from the sky, and answered with movement you cannot see but that you can feel. So the next time you pass a tree at night or look into the dark woods from a quiet road, think of this, that the forest is not sleeping. It is breathing, not in panic, not in haste, but in rhythm, in patience, in wisdom older than words, and that in every branch, every leaf, every inch of root holding the earth like a memory, there is breath, there is life, and there is peace. The roots do not sleep, they listen, they remember. And when the moon is high and the stars cast silver across the canopy, they whisper to each other, tree to tree, world to world, as they have always done, quietly, carefully, deep beneath our feet. The breath of the forest goes on. When the sun lowers itself behind the hills and the last golden light brushes the leaves, something changes in the air. The warmth fades, the buzz of insects shifts tone, and in the spaces between the trees, night begins to bloom like a dark flower. But what happens to the leaves? Those paper-thin membranes that drank sunlight all day, that shimmered in wind and light, what becomes of them when the sky dims and the world tilts into shadow? They do not fall asleep like animals with breath slowing and eyes closing, but they rest, they soften. They respond to the night not with retreat, but with a deep cellular quiet. Leaves are not just decorative, not just colour or rustle. They are factories of life. Inside each one are layers of cells designed to catch sunlight and transform it. They take in carbon dioxide, pull water from roots, and use light to make sugar, a kind of green alchemy known as photosynthesis. But at night, this stops. Light is not available, and without it the machinery inside each leaf rests. The chloroplasts, those tiny green engines of energy, dim their activity. The pores, stomata, that line the underside of the leaf like invisible mouths begin to close. Some shut completely, some remain open just enough to let trace gases through. It's not sleep, but it is something like it. In tropical forests and moist valleys where water is generous and the air stays damp, some plants open their stomata wider at night. They drink in carbon dioxide under the cover of dark, storing it to be used once daylight returns. This is more than a clever trick, it is a survival strategy. To open their pores during the heat of day would mean losing water to the dry air. So these plants have learned to listen to night instead. They move in time with stars rather than sun, and in that shift they survive. But even those that close their stomata entirely are still alive, still sensing. A leaf is not unaware. Inside its delicate skin there are chemical rhythms, circadian pulses that tell it what time it is, even in full darkness. Hormones drift through its cells like slow-moving clouds. One of these is called abscisic acid, which helps the leaf know when to close its pores, when to conserve. Others signal stress, or drought, or change. The leaf is constantly balancing, not through thought but through responsiveness, through memory encoded in molecules. If you hold a leaf in your hand at night, it may feel cooler, softer. It has relaxed its tension. No longer bracing against the sun or opening to the sky, it folds inward in its own way. Some leaves literally move, folding up or drooping, a behaviour called nyctinasti. The prayer plant is famous for this, its striped leaves raising themselves at dusk like folded hands. Legumes often do this too, their small leaves tucking in, closing the gap between themselves and the air. No one tells them to, they simply know. The drop in light, the change in temperature, the angle of the day, it's all recorded by their cells. It's all remembered. And as they move, they affect the air around them. Trees and plants are not passive. During the day, they shape the humidity, the temperature, the very composition of the air. At night, they change that again. With less water escaping their pores, the air becomes denser, richer. The forest holds moisture more tightly. Dew begins to form, and in this quiet wetness, life shifts. Frogs emerge, moths drift, bats pulse through the branches like shadows with wings. All of them breathe this air, this night-made breath that comes from leaves at rest. There's something else too, something even quieter. Leaves are not only factories and filters, they are sensors. In them are photoreceptors that detect not just light, but its quality, whether it's red, blue, far red. These receptors tell the leaf what kind of day it's been, how much energy it received, and whether it should prepare for growth or conservation. At night, these same sensors don't go to sleep. They record the dark, the length of it, the depth of it. This is how plants know when seasons change. Not by calendar, but by darkness. They count the hours without light, and when that count reaches a certain number, they begin to transform. Buds form, flowers open, leaves fall, all because the night told them it was time. So when you see a tree in bloom, or one turning gold before autumn, remember, it was night that taught it to change. Not the chill of air or the slant of the sun, but the silent counting of dark by its leaves. In every cell's a clock, not one that ticks, but one that turns, slowly, precisely, in tune with time's oldest rhythm. Leaves do not hum or throb with sound, but they do pulse. Water moves through them even in darkness, carried by pressure and tension. Nutrients travel, redirected toward roots or shoots depending on need. Even in their quietest moments, leaves are alive with motion. They may not shine under moonlight, but they glisten with dew, with stored breath, with the memory of sunlight held close like a folded note. Now picture a hillside of trees at midnight. No wind, no stars visible, just the quiet. You cannot see the leaves moving, but they are. Some fold, some shift, some breathe faintly. Each one is holding its place in the vast breath of the forest. Together they form a single layer, a skin stretched over the earth, sensing, resting, preparing. There is a kind of holiness in it, a reverence for life so deep it doesn't need to announce itself, it just is. To walk beneath those trees, to breathe that air, is to be wrapped in a living stillness. The leaves above you are not watching, not listening, and yet they are aware, not in the way of eyes or thoughts, but in the way of wind and water. Their sleep is not absence. It is presence in another form. You might touch one gently and feel the cool damp of the night gathered there. That moisture is not just weather, it is part of the leaf's breathing, part of its quiet dialogue with air and sky and time, and you too are part of it. When you breathe out, your carbon dioxide is drawn in. When you inhale, the last of the leaf's daytime gift still lingers. This exchange, this invisible giving and taking, continues even in darkness. So the next time you find yourself near leaves in the night, whether in a forest, a garden, or a single potted plant near your window, pause, breathe. Know that the leaf is not waiting for morning. It is alive in its own rhythm, dreaming perhaps in chemicals and moisture and slow-moving pulses, listening to the dark, counting the hours, remembering the light it has gathered, and holding gently the night air between its veins. Drift deeper now into the breath of leaves, into the chemistry of quiet. Night, for the leaf, is not a pause but a turning inward. Its outer work has finished, but its inner work has just begun. As moonlight brushes its surface and the air cools around its edges, the leaf becomes a chamber of transformation. Not a factory anymore, but a sanctuary, a soft green room where memory is processed and energy is moved from cell to cell. In this twilight stillness, life continues in another rhythm, one slower and softer than the pace of day. Within each leaf is a pattern, a vascular dance of xylem and phloem, tubes so small they're almost invisible, yet through them flows the liquid language of the plant. Water, minerals, sugars, signals, all of it travels in these channels, pushed and pulled by subtle gradients and gentle pressure. At night, the leaf no longer receives fresh sugars from photosynthesis, but it does not starve. It draws instead on reserves made during the day, sugars tucked into cells, waiting patiently for their purpose. These sugars are not just food, they are messengers, guiding growth, triggering repair, and feeding the roots below. Leaves speak in sugars. When a tree needs to grow taller, the sugars flow upward. When a root needs repair, they are sent downward. This allocation continues through the night, as the leaf decides where its energy must go, and it doesn't make these decisions in isolation. The whole plant is in quiet conversation with itself, a kind of internal sensing and responding that takes place through molecules, not thoughts. The leaf receives these signals and responds not with words but with direction, shifting molecules where they are needed, thickening some areas, softening others, adjusting flow and storage. This is not sleep. It is awareness shaped into form. And while all this happens within, the outside world is shifting too. The night air thickens with moisture, settling on leaf surfaces in beads of dew. These droplets are not random. They are drawn to the leaf by surface tension, by the cooling that takes place as leaves radiate their heat back to the sky. This dew can serve as a drink for the leaf, especially in dry places, where fog and night condensation may be the only source of water. Some plants have evolved to funnel this dew down to their roots. Others absorb it directly through their skin. The night provides, not in torrents, but in droplets, and the leaf accepts each one like a quiet offering. All around the leaf, the nighttime world is pulsing with change. Insects arrive that were hidden by day, pollinators of darkness, like moths and beetles, whose wings touch the leaf in passing. Their tiny feet may carry pollen or warn of predators. The leaf feels this in vibrations, in weight, in minute shifts in pressure. Though it has no nerves, it senses. Though it has no eyes, it knows touch. If damaged, a leaf can begin to seal its wounds at night, sending chemical alerts to the rest of the plant, and sometimes even to neighbouring plants through the air. Some species release volatile compounds into the breeze, invisible signals that drift from leaf to leaf, warning of threats or inviting defence. These are the scents of the night, herbal, sharp, and sometimes sweet. A language written not in letters but in particles. Now consider the role of light, or the absence of it. Though the leaf no longer receives sunlight, it is not blind. It perceives the absence with precision. Some plants are sensitive to moonlight, detecting even the faintest changes in illumination. This helps regulate flowering, especially in species that bloom at night or are triggered by lunar cycles. The leaf, through proteins called phytochromes and cryptochromes, keeps track of light and dark. These molecules change shape in response to wavelengths of light, and through them, the leaf knows not just whether it is night, but how long the night is and what kind of night it might be. Clouded, clear, bright with moon or dark with newness, these nuances matter. A plant's entire life cycle, from germination to reproduction, is shaped by this sensing. There's something poetic in this, that leaves, which seem so fragile and passive, are in fact among the most sensitive instruments in nature. They are tuned to temperature, humidity, light, touch, and chemistry, and they process all this not in one moment, but constantly, even when still. It is easy to imagine the leaf as a sleeper, resting after a long day. But this sleep is active. It listens to the world, holds its energy, and prepares for what's to come. It does not dream in the way we do, but it holds impressions of heat, of drought, of hunger, of abundance, and it adjusts, always adjusting. This ability to sense and respond gives the leaf its power. It is a balancing organ, keeping the plant alive not through strength, but through wisdom, the wisdom of knowing when to open and when to close, when to hold and when to release. This is what the leaf does at night. It decides, gently, quietly. With the memory of sun still lingering in its cells, and the breath of the earth curling around it in cool, damp sighs. Some leaves, as they age, begin to fade. Their green softens into yellow, orange, or red. But even then they serve. As the pigments shift, the leaf begins to break down its own contents, sending nutrients back into the tree before it falls. This too often happens at night, the dismantling of one part for the survival of the whole. It is not decay, it is generosity. It is the final gift of a leaf before the wind carries it away. In the deepest part of the night, when all seems still, the leaf may appear forgotten, but it is holding the night within it, its pores, its veins, its skin, all of it touched by dark and damp and the quiet weight of stars. It is part of the air now, shaping it, softening it, giving it texture and scent and breath. It is no longer working for the sun, it is working for the night itself, and in that work it becomes something more, a translator between earth and sky, a bridge between root and air, a silent, glistening vessel of memory and motion. Its sleep is not a surrender, it is a transformation, from the light of day to the depth of dark, from photosynthesis to presence. The night is long, but the leaf is patient, and when the wind moves, it does not resist. It bends, it trembles, it listens, and through that motion it gathers more than energy. It gathers experience, a whisper of insect wing, the hush of dew forming, the ache of cold, the touch of another leaf nearby. These things stay in the leaf, etched into its fibres, shaping how it grows, how it breathes, how it falls. So the next time you sit beneath a tree in darkness, remember, the leaves above you are not waiting. They are living, they are responding, they are resting and readying and remembering, not with minds but with matter, not with dreams but with time. The night air holds them gently, and they return the gift by breathing it into shape, again and again, all through the hours you cannot see. Now the night begins to lift, not all at once, but softly, like mist retreating from a field. The stars fade, not because they are gone, but because the atmosphere begins to fill with the whisper of light. This is the hour when shadows begin to blur and the outlines of leaves reappear, not sharp but glowing gently, kissed by the thought of dawn. And here, in this tender in-between, the leaves prepare to return to their work. But they do not wake with a jolt. They rise slowly, with a grace shaped by rhythm, by rest, and by the night's quiet memory. The first light that touches the leaf is not yet strong enough to trigger photosynthesis, but it is enough to stir the photoreceptors within. Those proteins, so patient through the dark, begin to change form again, responding to the blue and red wavelengths that seep into the canopy. In response, the leaf begins its gradual shift from inward to outward, from holding to giving. Its pores, closed or half-closed through the dark, begin to widen. Water begins to rise again through the stem and veins, pushed by a root pressure and pulled by the coming warmth. The machinery of light is not yet humming, but it is waking. The forest stirs with it. But before the sun fully arrives, the leaf takes one more breath of night air. This breath is heavy with dew, laced with the scent of soil and the faint sweetness of nocturnal flowers. In this breath is everything that the night has offered: coolness, rest, silence, signals, and as the leaf exhales its own trace of moisture and gas, it sends out a final echo of that quiet. The night does not disappear, it is carried forward. In the molecules of the leaf it is remembered. Not all leaves move visibly when light returns, but some do. The prayer plant, for instance, lowers its folded leaves as though releasing a thought it had been holding close all night. Some legumes unfurl their leaves again to catch the growing sun. These movements are slow and small but filled with purpose. They are part of the leaf's rhythm, a way of keeping time not by clocks, but by atmosphere and glow. The plant is not rushing, it is returning to photosynthesis, to wind, to warmth. The sugars made the day before begin to move again. Stored in cells overnight, they are now directed outward, to growing tips, to roots, to flowers. This movement is not chaotic, it is ordered, shaped by signals that move through phloem channels in response to need. The leaf becomes once again a hub of activity, but the night has shaped how it behaves. If the hours were cool and moist, the pores may open wider, confident in the safety of water. If the night was dry or stressed, they may open more cautiously. The leaf remembers, and it uses that memory to choose how much to give and when. Dawn is not a reset. It is a continuation of everything that came before. The leaf does not discard the dark. It builds upon it. The damage that may have occurred, tiny tears from wind, the nibble of an insect, has already begun to heal. The moisture lost the day before has been partly regained through the quiet drinking of dew. The balance of ions, the position of hormones, the tension of cell walls, all of it reflects the work of the night. The leaf you see now, shining in the morning light, is not the same as it was at dusk. It has changed, grown, adapted, and it will continue to do so as day unfolds. Some leaves may not rise again. Those nearing the end of their lives may remain curled, dry, their work complete. But even in this stillness they serve. As they fall, they return nutrients to the soil. As they decay, they feed the life below, fungi, insects, roots. The air carries the scent of their return, and nearby new leaves open wider in the growing light, ready to begin where others left off. And always, the air is part of it. Leaves shape air, and air shapes leaves. At night, the air becomes still, cool, and rich with carbon dioxide. The leaves respond. During the day, the air is warmed, filled with movement and sunlight, and the leaves respond again. It is a conversation as old as land plants, as constant as breath. And we are part of it. Our exhale feeds the forest. The forest's gift returns to us. Even while we sleep, this dialogue continues, leaf to lung, breath to breath. There is a moment just before full sunrise when the forest seems to pause. The light touches every edge but has not yet filled the spaces between. The birds begin to sing and the air takes on a golden softness. In this moment the leaves shimmer not just with light, but with something else. Readiness, a kind of quiet courage. They are not armoured, they are not loud, but they are persistent. They are steady. Every day they begin again, not knowing what the day will bring, wind, heat, hunger, shadow, but willing all the same. It is easy to forget them, to pass beneath trees without looking up, or to walk past plants without noticing their posture, their colour, their shape. But the leaves are always working, always breathing, always giving. Their rest is not laziness. It is wisdom. Their stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness held softly. Their movements may be slow, but they are precise, responding to light, to air, to touch, to need. And as the sun finally lifts above the horizon and the first true rays flood the canopy, the night falls away, not as something forgotten, but as something woven in. The leaves open wide, They catch the light. They begin the dance again. But they do so because the night allowed them to rest, to repair, to remember. And in every breath they now give, the night lives on. So the next time you find yourself in the early morning, as the sky changes and the light begins to stretch across your face, remember the leaves. Remember what they have done in the hours you could not see. They were not idle. They were preparing this moment. They were holding space for light to return. They were shaping the air you now breathe. And they will do it again when night falls once more, quietly, patiently, without praise or noise. Their sleep is not sleep at all. It is a kind of devotion, a devotion to breath, to life, to the rhythm of earth and sky. And as long as there is night, there will be leaves listening to it, moving with it and giving back the gift of air, one gentle breath at a time. In the heart of the forest, where the canopy folds the light into shadows and the soil carries the memory of rain, there is a breath that no one hears, but everything depends on it. It is not the breath of lungs or wind, not the cry of birds or the rustle of leaves, but a deeper kind of exhale. It rises invisibly from moss, from bark, from the forest floor blanketed in rot and root. This exhale does not come in gusts or rushes. It is steady, constant, slow. It is the breath of the forest itself, made not from a single being, but from thousands, millions, all living and dying and growing together. And though no single tree can speak it, together the forest breathes. During the day, leaves take in carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen, weaving air from light. This is the familiar rhythm, the one children learn in school, the gift of trees. But this is only half the breath. At night, when photosynthesis pauses and the sun no longer feeds the green engines above, the forest changes its tone. The leaves no longer pull light into sugar, and the oxygen they gave so freely now mixes with carbon dioxide from another source, the breath of the soil, the respiration of roots, the slow exhale of decomposition. And here in the dark the forest breathes inward, deeper, softer. Beneath every tree is a world unseen. The soil is not dead matter. It is alive, humming with bacteria, with fungi, with insects and invertebrates so small they cannot be seen, but whose lives form the bedrock of all green. These tiny lives break down fallen leaves, dead wood, and the remains of every living thing that has returned to the earth. In doing so, they release gases, carbon dioxide, methane in tiny pulses, even trace amounts of nitrogen compounds. These are the quiet exhalations of decay, of transformation. They rise from the forest floor in waves too fine for the eye to notice, but they shape the very air around us. Even tree roots breathe, not as lungs do, but through cellular respiration, converting sugars made during the day into energy for growth and repair. This process releases carbon dioxide, and at night, when the upper leaves sleep, this exhale grows stronger. The roots do their work in the dark, pushing and pulling water, interacting with fungi and microbes, reshaping their reach toward moisture or minerals, and with each pulse of effort they release their own breath, one that joins the soils, one that lifts slowly toward the surface, adding to the night's invisible tide. This breath is not just science, it is balance. During the day the forest captures, at night it releases, but the net result over time is generous. More oxygen given than taken, more carbon stored than spilled. Yet this nighttime exhale is essential. It nourishes the hidden world. It reminds the forest of itself. It is part of the great cycling of elements, where nothing is wasted, and even breath is transformed. If you lie on the forest floor at night, you may not hear this breath, but you might feel it. The air is denser, cooler, richer. There is a softness to it, as though the earth were sighing in its sleep. And in a way it is, not with exhaustion, but with contentment. The leaves above you may be still, but beneath you the world is alive with quiet motion. Roots growing in fractions of inches, fungal filaments extending like slow thoughts, beetles turning leaves to humus one bite at a time. Each act of movement, of digestion, of quiet hunger releases a breath. Each breath joins the whole. Some forests exhale more than others. In tropical jungles, where life is constant and lush, the breath of the forest is thick and ever-present, even during the day. In temperate forests, the rhythm is more pronounced, daytime growth, nighttime release. In boreal forests, the breath slows with the cold, but never stops entirely. Even under snow, roots pulse. Even in frozen stillness, the forest remembers its breath. This breath connects all parts of the forest. A fallen log is not the end of a tree, but the beginning of another chapter. As it decays, it gives warmth, shelter, nutrients. It becomes a hive for fungi, a nest for insects, a feast for microbes. Its slow crumbling releases gases that rise through the moss, through the air, returning what once stood tall to the sky. Even death breathes, even silence exhales. And the forest does not breathe alone. Animals add their rhythm to the mix, the gentle panting of deer, the soft rumble of a bear turning in sleep, the flutter of bats in the canopy. But even more than these are the breaths we do not hear, the breaths of microbes, which outnumber all other creatures in the soil. In 1 teaspoon of forest soil there may be 1 billion bacteria, each one respiring, each one taking in and letting out, forming a cloud of life beneath your feet. These are the lungs of the forest, the silent orchestra playing beneath the melody of birds and leaves. Even water breathes. In forest streams and puddles, tiny aquatic organisms contribute to the exhale, using oxygen and releasing gases as they live their brief, hidden lives. The forest breath is not confined to land, it seeps into water, into stone, into the hollow spaces left by roots that once grew there. And when rain falls, it stirs this breath again, waking spores, moistening leaves, helping everything rise once more. It is easy to think of forests as quiet, and they are, but not because nothing is happening. They are quiet because what happens there is patient. The forest's exhale is not frantic. It is deliberate. It is ancient. Every molecule in the air you breathe has likely passed through a leaf, through a root, through the lungs of soil. You carry the breath of forests in your chest, and they carry a piece of you too in every breath you release. So when you stand among the trees and feel the air cool against your skin, know that you are breathing with something vast. Not just a single tree, but an entire community. Moss, bark, insect, root, fungus, fern, owl, stone. Their breath mingles, overlaps, weaves into something shared. You are part of that rhythm even if you do not see it, even if you do not hear it. The forest exhales and you inhale, and somewhere beneath your feet a root stirs and a new breath begins. Let's drift deeper now into the breathless hush beneath the canopy, where the forest's exhale takes on new meaning. This breath is not simply the release of carbon from roots or the sigh of decay. It is also language, a slow and subtle conversation carried out in invisible molecules. Trees, though they do not speak, send signals into the air. They craft messages from gases, from scent, from the quiet chemistry of stress and memory. And at night these signals grow stronger, clearer, as the daytime noise of photosynthesis fades away. The forest listens better in the dark. Its breath becomes a voice. When a tree is wounded, boggy, by drought, by insect, by the bite of disease, it releases chemical signals. These are volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. They drift into the air like perfume, though not all of them are sweet. Some are sharp, bitter, strange, but to nearby trees they are meaningful. They say, danger. They say, defend. And in reply, the neighbouring trees begin to prepare, thickening leaves, changing the flavour of their sap, closing pores. This is not immediate. It is not loud. But over hours, even across species, the message spreads. The forest knows what is happening, even in the dark, especially in the dark. These chemical words ride on the night air, curling through the undergrowth, brushing against bark. And it's not just trees that speak this way. Grasses, shrubs, even mosses have their own voices. The entire forest, from root to canopy, becomes a choir of scent. And this scent is not only for each other. Insects hear it too. Some avoid plants that are crying out in defense. Others are drawn to them, knowing that predators might be near. Bats use scent to find fruit. Moths use it to find flowers that bloom only under moonlight. The air is filled with these silent conversations, most of which we will never hear, but which shape the world around us all the same. And beneath this chemical dialogue, another breath rises, the breath of heat. Even in the absence of sunlight, forests generate warmth. Microbial life, root respiration, the soft decay of fallen leaves, all these things release energy. A fresh log split open in the night will often feel warm to the touch, its core alive with motion and breakdown. Compost piles steam in cool air. Even the soil itself breathes warmth, a low and steady pulse that keeps the frost at bay. This warmth joins the forest's exhale, shaping the microclimate of the underbrush, keeping moss soft and insects active. It is not fire, it is fermentation, respiration, transformation, and transformation is everywhere. The leaf litter that blankets the forest floor is not debris, it is the future of the forest. In it live the decomposers, fungi with threads like veins, insects that tunnel and chew, bacteria that turn death into nutrition. These creatures live in the breath of decay, and they're essential. Without them, the forest could not renew itself. They take what was once green and vibrant and break it down into molecules small enough to feed roots. In doing so, they release more of the forest's secret breath, like carbon dioxide, yes, but also 100 other subtle exhalations, each one a marker of change, of transformation, of return. Even tree trunks breathe. Inside the wood, water moves, sugars flow, gases accumulate and escape. The bark is not a sealed wall, it is porous, alive. Gases pass through it, responding to pressure and time. A tree may release methane from deep within, especially in wetlands where roots live in low oxygen conditions. And while most of this breath is subtle, in some trees it becomes a feature. Consider the strangler fig, which wraps itself around another tree, hollowing and growing upward. Its interior is a cathedral of air and breath, vines pulsing with life exhaling from hidden chambers. Or the redwoods, whose trunks stretch beyond sight, their bark soaking in fog, their tissues releasing moisture and gases into the air. These are not statues, they are breathing beings. Now think of the forest not as separate trees, but as one living body. The soil is its stomach digesting, the canopy is its skin touching light. The roots are its nerves sensing below, and its breath, that steady exchange of gases, is the rhythm of its life. When one part is damaged, the whole feels it. When one part heals, the rest gains strength. The forest is not a collection. It is a system, a community, a pulse, and its breath is a bond, invisible but essential. Scientists who measure the forest's breath use tools to detect carbon fluxes, watching how gases shift with time. They can see the forest inhale in the morning as photosynthesis begins, and exhale at night as respiration takes over. They can even measure the difference between the breath of a young forest and an old one. Older forests, with deeper soils and more complex networks, breathe more slowly, more deeply, like the difference between a child's quick breath and the steady inhale of someone at rest. The age of a forest can be felt in its breath. But no tool can truly capture the intimacy of this exchange. The way moss seems to sigh when you touch it, the way mushrooms emerge overnight, feeding on invisible breath beneath the soil, the way the air changes when a tree falls, sharp, woody, damp with release. These things belong to the forest's inner life. They are its secret language, its slow exhale, and you are part of it. When you breathe in the forest, you are not separate from it. The air you take into your lungs has passed through leaves and roots, has mingled with the breath of foxes and owls, has drifted through the mouths of orchids and the gills of fungi. Every breath you take in the forest is a shared one. You give back your own in return, and the forest takes it, uses it, transforms it. This cycle is not metaphor. It is matter. You are woven into it with every breath. At night, this connection grows stronger. The stillness allows the breath to settle, to pool near the ground, to become thick with meaning. Walk through a forest at night and you'll notice you breathe more slowly, more deeply. Your body seems to align with the rhythm around you. This is not imagination. It is synchronization. You are tuning yourself to the breath of the earth. And perhaps this is the forest's true secret, that it does not breathe for itself alone. It breathes for everything, for birds, for beetles, for ferns and fungi, for rain and rock and river. It breathes for you. And in the deep hush of night, when your own breath softens and your thoughts quiet, you may find that you can hear it, not with ears, but with being. A presence, a pulse, breath older than time, still rising, still falling, still holding the world in its gentle lungs. Let us now move into the last breath of night, that liminal hour when the dark begins to loosen, and the first traces of morning shimmer on the forest skin. This is when the exhale of the forest softens into stillness, not because it has stopped, but because it is readying itself for another rhythm. All night long, the forest has been releasing, Not just gases and warmth, but history and memory, repair and rhythm. What remains now is not the end of breath, but the slow, silent anticipation of light. A pause, a moment held in the lungs of the earth before it turns to face the sun again. In this moment, the deepest layers of the forest settle. The soil, warm from decay and rootwork, rests. The gases it offered to the world begin to disperse. The last of the dew clings to leaves and spiderwebs like tiny beads of glass, and the scent of the forest shifts from the damp, rich breath of night to something lighter, something stirred by the promise of warmth. The mushrooms that pushed their way up through the dark now open themselves wide. The moths, having danced their invisible roots, return to their hollows. Everything exhales one last time. This exhale is not louder than the ones before it, but it is heavier. It is the final breath of a long, quiet labour, the labour of being alive through the dark. It carries the chemical traces of everything that transpired, the breakdown of leaf litter, the stirrings of roots, the soft creep of fungi, the hidden births of beetles and worms. It carries carbon from deep within the soil, molecules that once moved through trees now return to air. And in this breath the forest completes its cycle, returning what it cannot use, holding on to what it can, and preparing to begin again. But the breath does not vanish. What the forest exhales becomes the raw material of the day. The rising sun will strike the particles hanging in the air, warming them, lifting them, stirring them into motion. Photosynthesis will begin again, taking back the carbon offered through the night, weaving new sugars from light and memory. The forest inhales once more, but only because it has first fully exhaled. It is a balance, not of opposites, but of rhythms that dance with one another across time. And here is the truth held in the deepest part of the forest's secret breath, that nothing is wasted. Every breath out becomes someone else's breath in. The carbon dioxide released by tree roots feeds the next morning's leaves. The gases from rotting logs become the air for a lichen. The warmth from decomposing wood becomes a shelter for waking insects. This circular generosity is the forest's quiet genius. It asks for nothing, yet gives constantly. It holds nothing too tightly, yet forgets nothing either. In the soil, in the air, in the curled arms of branches, everything is remembered and returned. Humans often see breath as an individual thing, our own inhale and exhale, our own lungs, our own need. But the forest shows us something different. Breath is shared. Breath is exchanged. Breath is conversation. And in the deep woods, where roots and fungi stretch across miles and where trees grow not alone but in families, breath becomes a kind of communion, a promise that life does not happen alone. Some trees, especially those in ancient groves, exhale more than just gases. They release compounds into the air that affect how nearby plants grow, how insects behave, even how people feel. Studies have shown that walking through forests rich in terpenes and phytoncides, substances released by trees, can lower human stress, ease inflammation, and bring calm to the nervous system. The forest's breath reaches into our own bodies, softening us, reminding us of a rhythm we too often forget. It is not just clean air, it is ancestral air, air laced with the memory of stone and rain and leaf. In this way, the exhale of the forest is not just biology, it is story. A story told in invisible sentences, written across the air, passed from branch to breeze. You are breathing that story now, you have always been, and you are part of it, not just as a listener, but as a character written into the script of earth. The dawn arrives fully now, the birds begin their chorus, the insects lift into motion, light spills down through the canopy in soft beams. The breath of the forest changes again, now pulled, now stretched, now mingled with heat and motion. But if you sit still enough, if you breathe with your whole self, you can still feel the night's exhale echoing in your chest. A softness, a slowness, a reminder. Because in the end, the secret of the forest's breath is this: it never truly ends. It continues beneath the surface, behind the sounds of day, behind the green leaves turned upward toward the sun. Beneath every inhale is an exhale waiting. Beneath every stillness, a pulse. The forest is breathing now, even as you read this. It is exhaling gently through moss and bark and hollow, through the arms of ferns and the folds of vines. And somewhere that breath is finding its way into you. So take it in, let it fill you. Let it remind you that life is not fast and growth is not loud and breathing is more than the sound of lungs. It is the rhythm of the earth, moving through you. It is the story of trees, of time, of transformation. And when you breathe out again, know that the forest may take a part of you too, your warmth, your sigh, your small gift to the air. And so the cycle continues, quietly, gently, always. High in the still branches of the night, where the leaves hold silver-like secrets, the trees drink moonlight in their own quiet way. Not through their eyes, for they have none, not through thoughts, for they do not think, but through water, through cells, through vessels that run like rivers inside their bodies, the xylem veins. These hollow tubes, carved by time and carried by need, stretch from root to crown, lifting water inch by inch, drop by drop into the canopy. During the day, it is sunlight that drives the pull, evaporation from the leaves creating a soft suction, a lift that moves life upward. But at night, when that energy fades and the forest is wrapped in shadow, something more delicate takes its place. The trees don't stop, they shift, and in this shifting they become attuned to a subtler force, the moon and all the stillness it brings. The xylem does not sleep. It is not muscle, and yet it moves. It does not think, and yet it responds. During the night, when transpiration from the leaves slows or ceases altogether, a new kind of water movement begins. Root pressure builds in the quiet dark, pushing water upward even in the absence of light. The roots, fed by moisture drawn from deep soil, continue their work, absorbing, lifting, redistributing. This water isn't being lost to the air now, it is being used to repair cells, to hydrate tissues, to balance the body of the tree from the ground up. And as it rises, it carries within it tiny passengers, minerals, memory, moonlight. It's not that the xylem can detect the moon directly. There are no rods or cones, no pupils adjusting to lunar phases. But the tree feels the moon all the same, through temperature, through gravity, through the long pull of tides that reach even the sap. Some scientists believe that lunar cycles subtly affect the flow of xylem, especially in certain species. Water rises higher in full moonlight, perhaps nudged by the same forces that stir the oceans. In mangroves and coastal forests, the rhythm of tides is not just seen but lived. Roots time their intake to avoid saltwater intrusion. Leaves align their openings to match the ebb and flow, and all of it runs through the xylem, the silent highway of plant life. The xylem itself is made of cells that once lived and then gave up their lives to become vessels. Long, narrow tubes lined end to end, their walls thickened by lignin. This is the scaffolding of trees, the strength behind their reach, the reason they stand so tall for so long. These cells no longer divide or grow, they do not speak or think, and yet they are essential. They are the reason water can move from deep underground to the sky. They are the reason the leaf in the moonlight remains soft and full. Every drop of water in a tree's highest branch was once drawn upward through these veins, pulled by evaporation, pushed by the root pressure, guided by need. At night, when pulling slows and pushing takes over, the xylem becomes a passage for balance. It helps the tree recover from the heat and stretch of day. It refills tissues that lost moisture. It redistributes nutrients from root to shoot. It's a quiet process. No heartbeat, no hum, just a slow rising. But if you were small enough to sit inside a single xylem vessel, you would feel the movement, gentle and constant, like the tide beneath a wooden dock. No rush, just rhythm. And this rhythm is not random. It follows patterns, circadian rhythms, lunar rhythms, seasonal shifts. It is shaped by air temperature, by humidity, by soil saturation. The tree knows, in its own way, when to pull harder and when to pause. At night, with the air cooler and the stomata mostly closed, water loss is minimal. So the tree becomes inward. It turns its flow toward restoration. The xylem carries water not to fuel photosynthesis, but to heal, to hydrate, to prepare. The veins are not just for movement, they are for memory. Water flowing through xylem carries with it more than minerals. It carries chemical signals, hormones, enzymes, even distress molecules. When a part of the tree is injured, signals can travel through the xylem to alert the rest. It is not fast, not like nerves in animals, but it is enough. Enough to shift behavior, enough to begin defense, enough to prepare. These messages move with the sap, riding on moonlit waves through the silence of the trunk. The tree listens to itself in the dark. In the moonlight, some trees seem to glow, not with light, but with health, their leaves thick with moisture, their trunks strong with stored energy. This is not coincidence. This is the result of xylem in motion, of water lifting quietly in the night to feed the parts unseen. You may not notice it. You may think the tree is asleep. But it is working, not urgently, not loudly, but with purpose. In desert regions where water is precious and days are punishing, trees rely heavily on nighttime xylem flow. Their stomata may remain closed all day to prevent water loss, opening only at night to breathe. And in that dark breath, the xylem rises to meet the need. Cam plants, like cacti and agaves, open their pores in the cool of night and begin their slow chemistry. The xylem supplies water to tissues made tight with sunlight. It is a gift drawn from the deep, offered gently beneath stars. Even in temperate forests, nighttime xylem activity is key to survival. After long summer days, trees must repair the small damage done by sunlight, by wind, by the weight of their own growing leaves. Water moves to where it is needed most, guided by gradients of pressure and need. The tree is not choosing, it is responding. It is always responding. And so the moonlight becomes part of the process, not as fuel, but as timing, as invitation. It signals the body of the tree that day is done, that it is time to turn inward, to restore, and through the xylem that turning begins. A vessel opens, a pulse begins, a droplet moves. The forest shifts from sun to moon. If you could sit beneath a tree at midnight and listen not with your ears but with your skin and your breath, your stillness, you might feel it. A coolness rising from the trunk, a dampness softening the bark, a silence that is full, not empty. That is the sound of water moving upward, of veins doing their work. It is the forest's quiet heartbeat. It is the moon's reflection in the living wood. It is the secret life of xylem, the veins that carry not just water, but the memory of night. And all around, the forest moves with it. One tree feeds another through shared roots. One breath becomes a signal. One moonlit moment becomes a preparation for growth, for bloom, for the return of light. And though you cannot see it, it continues. Always. Beneath bark, behind leaf, beneath moonlight. The rise of water, the whisper of veins, the song of xylem in the dark. Let's follow that water deeper now, not in its upward climb, but into its intention, into the way it knows where to go and why. The xylem, that quiet conduit of life, does more than move liquid. It holds a forest's map within it, a fluid memory that responds not only to the pull of day but to the hush of night. When the moon is high and the wind is calmed, when even the owls are silent for a breath, the xylem veins still move. They are responding to something older than sunlight, the quiet choreography of temperature, pressure, root signal, and need. Inside each tree, every vessel in the xylem knows its direction not by thought, but by flow. It follows pressure gradients that change subtly through the dark. Some of that pressure is created by root cells pulling minerals into themselves, creating an osmotic draw that lifts water upward. Some of it comes from surrounding tissues losing water to metabolic repair. And some of it, though we cannot yet fully measure it, seems to be driven by the rhythms deeper than the tree itself. Lunar cycles, geomagnetic pulses, seasonal pulses felt at the molecular level. The tree is part of Earth, and Earth speaks in tides, and the xylem listens. As water travels upward, it is not only responding to demand, it is preparing for possibility. Even in the absence of photosynthesis, trees anticipate. They send moisture to buds that have not yet opened, to branches that hold flowers still hidden in tight knots of green. This pre-dawn readiness is quiet but determined. By the time sunlight touches the leaf, the vessels beneath it are already full. This is the forest's version of hope, the steady filling of every part with the expectation of light. Water in the xylem also transports information. It carries signaling molecules, alerting distant parts of the plant to changes in the environment. If the roots detect drought or the threat of salt intrusion, they send hormonal messages upward through the xylem, altering how leaves open, how sugars are used, how growth is prioritized. These messages may take minutes or hours to arrive, but they do arrive, moving with each upward ripple of fluid as soft and sure as breath. What's more, the xylem sometimes carries echoes of the past. In years of drought, its vessels become narrower, more cautious, shaped to prevent embolisms, tiny air bubbles that can block flow. These narrower vessels leave behind a record, visible in the rings of the tree. Wide rings speak of wet years, of generous soil and long seasons. Tight rings tell of dryness, of careful living. And these changes affect more than structure. They affect memory. A tree that has lived through scarcity is more cautious in its flow. It opens its pores more carefully, distributes water more conservatively. The xylem remembers, the xylem learns. This memory is written in water, in the way it moves, in the strength or weakness of its rise. It is shaped not only by the tree's choices, but by the forest's voice. Trees growing close together can influence one another's xylem behavior. In tightly knit groves, the water use of one tree may affect the pressure in its neighbors. Through root grafts or fungal bridges, trees can even share water. If one tree is stressed, another may help, lending not just moisture but life, and the xylem is the channel through which this quiet generosity flows. Even at night, this sharing continues, perhaps especially at night. With evaporation slowed and moisture loss reduced, the forest becomes more equal. Water can move from the more hydrated to the more needy. The dark becomes a time of redistribution, not charity, but cooperation. The veins of one tree extend their quiet strength to another. A single drop becomes a message. You are not alone. This principle stretches beyond trees. In the understory, in shrubs and ferns, in vines curled like handwriting around trunks, xylem does its work with equal grace. In climbing plants, xylem must sometimes fight gravity at sharp angles, carrying water to dizzying heights through stems that twist and reach. And yet the principles remain. Pull, pressure, patience, aided by the cool of night when loss is minimal and moonlight filters down like a silent partner, the xylem rises. Some researchers believe the xylem even shifts slightly in function at night, not just carrying water but serving as a signaling route for rest. As leaves close, as photosynthesis halts, internal pH changes begin. These affect enzyme activity, starch storage, and even the expression of certain genes. The tree is not sleeping, but it is adjusting. The night brings about a different biochemistry, and quieter, slower, no less vital, and the xylem flows through it all, a still river carrying the codes of dusk. There is something poetic about the fact that the xylem, a dead tissue by the time it functions, is so essential to life. It is a vessel of memory, shaped by living cells and then left behind to serve. Like the bones in a bird's wing or the shell of a snail, it's both structure and passage. It is formed through sacrifice, living cells giving up their function to become vessels for others. And in this, it reflects the forest's deeper truth, that life often depends on what remains. If you cut a tree, you may see rings, but you are also seeing time. The story of every dry season, every wet year, every night the tree waited in moonlight for the return of sun. These rings were formed with xylem flow. They are poems in water and wood, etched year by year beneath bark. And even now, as the living outer layers draw fluid upward, the older rings hold the memory of what once passed through them. To imagine this is to see the forest differently, not as a static grove, but as a body filled with veins, not as still trunks, but as upward rivers flowing in silence. The next time you walk beneath a tree at night, remember what flows beneath the bark: slow water, carrying minerals, messages, and the readiness for light. You cannot hear it, you cannot see it, but you breathe the air it makes possible. You walk in the shadow it prepares, and if you pause long enough, if you breathe with intention, you might feel it. That cool stillness, that quiet weight of water rising through a trunk that looks asleep but isn't. That's the forest's pulse. That's the moonlight moving in veins you cannot see. That's the xylem, lifting life one silent breath at a time. And now the night begins to shift. A faint light rises behind the trees, not yet the golden warmth of day, but a grey softenings of the sky, a silent folding of shadow into shape. The forest begins to stir, leaves hold on to the last drops of dew, and the air carries the weight of everything that happened in the dark. But inside the trees, the water is still rising. The xylem, that silent thread of motion, continues its steady climb. Even now, with the return of light near, it does not stop. for it is not merely reacting, it is completing a cycle. A long, slow offering that has moved through roots and bark, through cells no longer alive but still filled with purpose. As dawn arrives, the forces that pull water upward begin to change. The sun begins to warm the canopy, and leaves respond. Their stomata, those tiny mouths beneath their surfaces, begin to open. Slowly at first, as if remembering how. As light increases, evaporation begins again, not violently but gently as part of the rhythm that connects tree to sky. This process, known as transpiration, becomes the primary engine of upward water flow once more. But it does not erase the night's work. What the roots sent upward in darkness now arrives in time. The pre-dawn xylem flow has filled the vessels, rehydrated the tips, brought minerals to the buds. It has readied the tree for the new day. This readiness is not always visible. There is no movement, no bloom, no shimmer to catch the eye. But if you could peer inside the tree, you would see a body in full alignment, its tissues hydrated, its cells alive with potential, its vessels clear and pulsing. This is not unlike the human body preparing to wake, organs resuming rhythm, nerves reawakening, breath returning to pace. The tree does not sleep, not exactly, but it rests, it recalibrates, and the xylem is its quiet architect rebuilding the body from within. What is most extraordinary, perhaps, is that this happens without thought, without direction. No mind guides the water, no decision is made, and yet everything works. The tree responds to its own chemistry, its own internal signals, its memory of past nights, past droughts, past dawns. It responds to the lunar pull, to the texture of the soil, to the echo of a rain still lingering in root and fibre. And this is the lesson the xylem teaches, that not all intelligence needs a brain. Some wisdom is held in structure, in pattern, in the shape of how things move, and as the morning light brightens, that movement continues. But the role of the xylem shifts. Now it must keep up with the demands of light. As photosynthesis begins again, the tree's thirst grows. Water must rise faster, more urgently, but it can do so because the night has prepared it. The vessels are already filled. The tree is not beginning anew each morning. It is continuing from the moonlight that filled its veins while the world slept. There is a kind of beauty in knowing that something so vital is also so invisible. The xylem makes no sound, it gives no scent, it leaves no trace except health. You cannot see it working, and yet without it, the forest would fall. The green you love, the shade you sit in, the fruit you taste, all of it begins in water rising through xylem, day and night, light and dark. And in that constancy there is a lesson, that life does not always announce itself. Sometimes it moves in silence, in repetition, in the hidden work that no one sees, but everyone needs. And yet, if you pay attention, you can find signs. The coolness of bark before sunrise, the damp scent near roots, the way a tree seems more alive in the early hours, more open, more present. These are the fingerprints of the night's water. These are the footprints of xylem, not loud but lasting, not grand but generous. In some cultures, people rise before dawn to walk among trees, believing the air to be most pure at that hour. And science now agrees. Those early hours hold higher humidity, cooler temperatures, and often more oxygen. But perhaps what those early risers sense most deeply is not the chemistry, but the presence. The trees, having completed their silent work, stand full and steady. They have drunk deeply of the night, and in their stillness is an invitation to do the same, to breathe, to rise slowly, to prepare for light, not in haste but in fullness. Because the story of moonlight in the xylem veins is not about movement alone, it is about trust. Trust in the cycles that continue whether we notice or not. Trust in the quiet forces that build life from the inside out. Trust in the stillness that feeds strength. The tree does not force the water to rise, it makes space for it. It opens the path, and in doing so it is filled. And so as the day begins and the moon fades, the xylem continues. Not because the night is gone, but because it is remembered. The moonlight has passed through roots, through vessels, through leaves. It has shaped the flow, it has carved the rhythm. It lives now in the green tips, reaching for the sun. You may not see the xylem. You may never hear its name spoken outside of books, but it lives inside every branch you touch, every bloom you admire, every tree that stands steady while the world shifts around it. It is the unseen spine of the forest, the lifeline of every leaf, the memory of water written in wood. And when night returns and the sky is once again brushed with stars, the xylem will return to its slower pace, its moonlit purpose. It will rise again, it will remember again, it will continue the work of holding life, drop by drop, cell by cell, breath by breath. In silence, in service, in the soft pull of the moon, there is a silence in the forest that goes deeper than quiet, deeper than windless branches, deeper than the hush between distant bird calls. It is a silence wrapped in layers like blankets around a sleeping body, and at the very centre of that hush is the bark. Rough, cracked, soft, smooth, bark wears many faces, but no matter its form, it holds within it something ancient. Beneath its surface lies a stillness that is not emptiness, but a world unto itself. A place where time moves differently, where the tree listens without ears, breathes without lungs, and lives without motion. Bark is often mistaken for armour, something passive, something meant only to protect. And while it does shield the tree from the scrape of claws and the bite of frost, it is not simply a wall. It is alive, at least in part. The outermost layers may be dry, lifeless cells hardened by air and age, but beneath them, just beneath the surface, there is life. There is phloem, that gentle river of sugar and signal. There is cambium, the thin layer of ever-dividing cells, always building, always giving rise to new wood and bark. And within that cambium is the pulse of the tree, not like a heartbeat, not rhythmic, but slow and sure, shaped by seasons and moonlight, by memory and need. This hidden inner life is not something we often see. It doesn't announce itself in blossoms or fruit. It doesn't glow or flutter, but it is where growth begins. Each spring the cambium awakens, adding new rings of xylem inward and new bark outward. This is how trees grow, not from the top alone, but from within, pushing out slowly, gently, year by year. And the bark expands with them, stretching, cracking, thickening. In some trees, like birch or sycamore, this outer bark flakes away and scrolls or plates, revealing the pale, living tissue beneath. In others, like oak or pine, it deepens into fissures darkened by time, furrowed by weather. But no matter the shape it takes, the bark holds stories. Scars from fire, grooves from insects, patterns carved by lichen, by fungi, by the slow crawl of snails. It carries the memory of storms. It holds the whisper of the air that touched it. And beneath it all, the stillness grows, not sound because nothing happens, but sonant because everything is happening so slowly it feels like prayer. If you place your hand on a tree's bark at night, when the forest is still and the wind has paused, you can feel it. Not movement, not warmth, but presence, a quiet waiting, a patient holding. Trees do not shift and sway without reason. They conserve their energy. Beneath the bark, that energy is stored in sugars, in starches, in the silent flow of sap that runs downward in the dark. While xylem rises, phloem descends, carrying the sweet products of photosynthesis from leaves to roots, from the bright edge of the tree to the dark core of its foundation, and it moves through the bark in the channels that wind like unseen rivers. This flow is subtle. It does not surge. It drifts, responding to pressure, to temperature, to the needs of tissues it passes. It is how the roots are fed, how wounds are healed, how the tree cares for itself in somnolence. And wrapped around this whole system is the bark, not idle, but vigilant. At night, when predators roam and frost settles, bark shields the life inside. Its thickness determines how much cold the tree can survive. Its texture influences how much water it loses. In some species, bark reflects light to keep the tree cool. In others, it insulates deeply, protecting against fire. And in all trees, bark breathes, slowly, in tiny openings, called lenticels, which allow gas exchange even when leaves are gone. These pores are not loud, they do not gape or close, but they allow the tree to whisper with the air, to trade oxygen and carbon dioxide, to stay connected to the world even when wrapped in quiet. Inside the bark, insects may sleep, larvae may grow, tiny spiders may spin webs in its cracks, birds may press their feathers against it, drawn to its rough warmth, moss may cover it, Lichens may paint it with pale greens and ash blues, and fungi may thread into it, not always as invaders but sometimes as partners. Mycorrhizal connections that run through the bark and into the roots, linking tree to soil, tree to tree. The bark is not alone. It is community. It is a wall, but a living one. A wall that listens, and it listens especially well at night. In the dark, when the heat of the sun has faded and the forest breathes more slowly, the bark becomes more than skin. It becomes the boundary between the inner and the outer world. It becomes the quiet translator between the stillness within and the wind, the rain, the curious touch of deer nose or human hand. It does not speak, but it receives, it absorbs, and it changes. Some trees thicken their bark in response to threat. Others grow bark with resins or chemicals that deter insects. Some trees, when wounded, begin to form a special kind of tissue beneath the bark called callus, a kind of healing blanket that wraps the injury and slowly builds itself into scar. Even in pain, even in damage, the stillness beneath bark holds the shape of healing. It does not rush. It does not despair. It begins, slowly, faithfully, as all trees do. And if you were to peel the bark back gently, respectfully, you would see the tree's most recent work, glistening layer, green or pale or red, slick with moisture and alive with possibility. This is where the future lives. This is where the next ring will form. And though we rarely see it, it is always there, just beneath the surface, doing its work in quiet. To know the bark is to know the tree differently, not as something distant, towering, unreachable, but as something layered, present, intimate. It invites touch. It marks time. It offers shelter. And it holds within it a stillness so complete, so unshakable, that it becomes a kind of anchor in the rush of the world. So the next time you walk through a forest, place your hand on a trunk. Let your fingers rest on the bark, not just to feel texture, but to sense the quiet beneath it. That is the tree's stillness. That is the breath it does not exhale. That is the life it carries in silence. And in that silence you may find something you didn't know you were missing. A steadiness, a slowness, a rhythm that asks nothing of you except to listen. Just listen, because beneath that bark, in the place no one sees, the tree is growing, the tree is healing, the tree is becoming, slowly, softly, in a silence deep enough to carry the weight of time. Beneath bark, beneath the living skin of trees, time flows in ways our bodies rarely feel. It moves not in minutes, not in the ticking rhythm of clocks, but in shifts of water, in patterns of pressure, in tiny growths that take weeks to begin and years to show. To the tree, change is not a moment. It is a season, a memory pressed into layers. And the stillness beneath bark is where this memory is stored, in the cambium, in the phloem, in the quiet vessels that carry stories instead of sound. The cambium, that thin veil of life between wood and bark, is always working. Even when the world is cold, even when the sun hides for days, it continues, not with urgency, but with persistence. These cells divide one after the other, sending part of themselves inward to become wood and part outward to become bark. It is the only part of the tree that can truly create new girth, and it does so silently, without leaves to show its labour, without flowers to announce its presence. The cambium is a whisper, not a song. But it is the whisper that builds forests. Just inside this veil is the phloem, the vascular tissue that carries sugar from leaf to root. Where the xylem lifts water upward, the phloem flows downward, or sideways, or wherever energy is needed. It is not simply a river of sweetness. It is a courier of intelligence. Within the sap of phloem, messages travel, hormones that signal stress, molecules that prepare buds for bloom, alerts that wounds have been made. In this flow, the tree communicates with itself, not with words, but with chemistry, not with questions, but with knowing. And wrapped around all this, the cambium, the phloem, the wooden core, is the bark. Bark doesn't just hold it all in, it holds it all together. It guards without blocking, it shields without sealing. Through it pass gases, through it pass signals, through it pass time and touch and weather. It is the interface between the inner world of the tree and the vast conversation of the forest. And though it may seem inert, it changes constantly. Bark thickens in response to stress. It darkens with age, with ash, with memory. It learns how to protect. In fire-prone forests, bark becomes armour. thick, insulating, layered with compounds that resist flame. In tropical rainforests, bark may be thin and smooth, quick to shed fungi and pests. In desert trees, it may be coated in waxes or crystals to reduce water loss. The bark does not simply exist. It adapts. It shapes itself around the needs of its environment, around the trials of its own history. Every crack is a decision. Every ridge is a line written in response. But perhaps the stillest part of bark is what lies between its layers. The air pockets, the channels for insects, the resting spaces for spores and seeds. Within those narrow spaces, life pauses. Larvae sleep, mosses wait, water holds. These are the margins of action, the places where life takes shelter in stillness. The bark is not only for the tree, it is for everything that leans on the tree, for the beetle that nests beneath it, for the bird that digs into it, for the lichen that writes pale runes across its surface, growing so slowly that a year's change may be invisible to the eye. And still, the bark holds, not grudgingly but generously. Its stillness is not result, it is offering. It offers protection, surface shade, even flavour. Some animals gnaw at bark in winter when other food is gone. Some humans peel it for medicine, for paper, for scent. Trees do not fight this. They heal if left a chance. They seal the wound slowly, folding the injury inward, surrounding it with layers of quiet repair. This ability to heal, to regenerate, is perhaps one of the deepest powers hidden beneath bark. A tree wounded does not panic. It does not forget the injury, but it does not halt its life for it. Instead, it reroutes its flow. It grows around the damage. It compartmentalizes, building barriers in the wood to keep decay from spreading, creating new pathways for sap, forming scar tissue that strengthens over time. The wound remains, but so does the tree. Both become part of the story. Trees do not resist change, they absorb it. They integrate it. Beneath bark, you will find not just smooth function, but ancient resilience. Some trees have stood for centuries, their outer bark bearing scars of lightning, fire, flood, yet inside the flow continues. Cambium still divides, phloem still sends sugar. The tree has known storms and droughts, and still it grows. Its stillness is not stillness of inaction, it is stillness of trust, of quiet endurance. And even now, scientists are discovering more about what happens in these quiet tissues. That there are proteins in the bark that detect temperature, light and touch. That the phloem contains signaling molecules as complex as those found in animal nerves. That the cambium can respond not only to damage but to vibration, to sound, perhaps even to footsteps. The tree listens with its body. It hears through stillness. And the stillness beneath bark is not confined to one tree. Through root grafts, through fungal networks, trees share signals with their neighbours. If one tree is wounded, the message may travel underground to others, prompting changes in chemistry and structure. Trees in the forest are not stagnant pillars. They are participants in a slow, steady exchange. And much of that exchange is carried through and beneath the bark, through the veins and layers we almost never see. And to sit with a tree and know this, to know that beneath the bark is not just wood but time and language and healing, is to see trees differently. You begin to feel their patience, you begin to sense their calm, and you begin perhaps to mirror it. Because in a world that moves too quickly, there is something sacred about the slowness of bark. The way it receives everything without rush, the way it changes without drama, the way it waits and grows and shelters and scars and heals without ever asking to be seen. So the next time you find yourself beneath a tree, sit still. Place your palm on the trunk. Let it rest there, not to press or ask, but just to be. Beneath your hand is a world you cannot feel, but it feels you. The warmth of your skin, the moisture of your breath, the quiet of your presence. And for a moment you become part of the stillness, not apart from it, but within it, as if the bark has accepted you, just as it accepts sunlight, rain, wind, night. And within that acceptance is something rare, a sense that time need not be rushed, that healing need not be loud, that life, when held with care, can move even in stillness, especially in stillness. Now the forest begins to shift again. The darkness softens and pale light sifts gently through the upper branches. The world begins to stir, but the bark remains. It does not wake because it never slept. Through the hush of the night and the long stretch of shadow it stood, unmoving, yet full of motion. Beneath its cracked or smooth surface the tree continued its ancient rhythm, and as the sun rises once more, that stillness does not vanish. It carries forward into the day like a hidden current, shaping how the tree greets the light. Morning dew clings to bark, beads caught in ridges or rolling down smooth trunks and slow trails. These droplets are not simply water. They are gifts from the air, reminders of the tree's quiet exchange with the sky. Bark holds them with no hurry, letting them slip inward where the surface is porous or letting them fall to the roots below. This too is part of the stillness, a willingness to let things pass through, to take what is needed and release what is not. Bark does not cling. It allows, it trusts, and that trust extends through the cycles of the seasons. In winter, bark thickens and tightens, protecting the living tissues beneath from frostbite and ice. Some trees develop deep furrows that trap insulating air, while others keep their surfaces tight and clean to shed snow and resist splitting. Spring comes, and the cambium beneath begins to stir, building new wood, pushing out new bark. In summer, the bark breathes with the leaves, exchanging gases, helping regulate temperature. And in autumn, as leaves fall and the tree turns inward, the bark continues its vigil. It holds, it remembers, it prepares. Within it lie scars, not always visible, not always raw, but present. Some are from storms, others from the grazing of deer, the pecking of birds, the carving of insects. Some are from us, names cut with knives, ropes tied too tightly, footsteps that pressed too hard. And yet the tree does not protest. It endures. It does not forget, for bark remembers through texture and growth, but it forgives through its patience. It becomes stronger where it was once broken. And in time, the scars become part of the story, woven into the fabric of the trunk like wrinkles around a smiling eye. Even when bark peels or falls, it continues to serve. A fallen strip becomes shelter for beetles. A decaying trunk, wrapped in layers of broken bark, becomes home to moss, to centipedes, to small seedlings finding their first roots. The stillness does not die. It spreads. It becomes part of the forest's floor, part of the humus that feeds the next generation. Bark is not waste. It is wealth, broken down into the food of roots, into the soft cushion beneath your feet as you walk. And in some forests, entire ecosystems live on bark. Epiphytes, mosses, lichens, orchids root themselves in its folds. Ants build highways along its grooves. Tiny frogs find pockets of damp inside its crevices. The bark is not merely part of the tree, it is a world all its own. And still, through all this, it holds its shape, slow to change, slow to speak, but always present. Some cultures have long known this. They harvest bark not with blades, but with prayers. They take only what is needed and thank the tree for its offering. In such traditions, the bark is not a resource, but a teacher. It teaches resilience, boundaries, quiet strength, the ability to protect without hardening, the ability to remain rooted while the world changes around you. And it changes, always. The forest is never still, not truly. Trees grow, they lean, they fall. Bark cracks open in the heat and tightens in the cold. Lichens bloom, then fade. Insects move in, then vanish. But the tree holds its stillness throughout, not by resisting movement, but by accepting it. The stillness is not about being unmoved. It is about moving slowly, meaningfully, with the full awareness of time. Bark teaches us this, that growth does not have to be loud, that healing does not have to be quick, that presence can be powerful even in silence. You can lean against a tree for hours and it will say nothing, and yet offer you everything: shade, stillness, a moment to feel what it means to be patient, to be firm, to be kind. When the wind rushes through the leaves, the bark remains still. When the rain drums its fingers across the canopy, the bark stands silent. It listens to all this, not with ears, but with memory. It takes in the rhythm of the forest, and it holds that rhythm within its rings, its layers, its breathless, beautiful stillness. And when night falls again, and the forest grows quiet once more, the bark will be there, as it always has been, as it always will be, not watching, not waiting, simply being, offering protection to the lives within and around it, holding space for healing, for growing, for resting, without praise, without demand, and perhaps that is its greatest gift, to remind us that we do not need to always move, always reach, always speak to be full of meaning. Sometimes we are most alive when we are most still, when we are listening, when we are holding, when we are rooted. So the next time you stand in a forest or even beside a single tree in a field, touch the bark, not just as texture, but as teacher. Let it remind you that stillness is not the absence of life. It is life lived with depth, with quiet purpose, with care. Beneath that bark, the tree breathes. Beneath that stillness, the forest lives. And in your own stillness, you may find you are part of it too, not outside the forest, but within it, as steady as the trunk, as patient as the bark, as present as the silence between wind. When night falls over the forest and the sky blooms with stars, the branches do not sleep. They reach gently into the cool dark, lifted like arms in quiet motion, not grasping, not calling, simply present. Still and slow, the branches hold their place against the sky, sensing more than we know. Beneath their bark and buds, within their fibres and leaves, they read the night, not just the absence of sun, but the presence of something older, a rhythm, a signal, a counting that happens not with numbers, but with light. To the human eye, the night sky is a canvas. To the branches of trees, it is a clock. Stars are not only distant suns, they are timepieces, markers of position, of movement, of change. And though trees do not have eyes to watch the constellations rise and fall, they are attuned to the light that starlight shares. They count in hours, in lengths of night, in shifts of darkness. This is how they know when to grow, when to sleep, when to bloom. It is not instinct, it is intelligence of another kind, one written in cells and sap, not thoughts. At the tips of branches, leaves whisper with moonlight. And even before leaves unfurl in spring, buds hold the memory of past seasons. Encased in those tight knots are decisions made by light, how long the night was, how deep the winter, how far away the warmth. These choices are recorded in photoreceptors, tiny proteins within the cells that detect changes in light. Phytochromes and cryptochromes respond to different wavelengths, and together they build a picture of the season. Not a photograph, a feeling, a readiness. The tree knows, through its branches, when the world is shifting. And so, night after night, the branches keep count. Not by measuring stars, but by measuring time through light. They know when the nights are lengthening, when they are shortening. This is called photoperiodism, and it shapes everything from leaf fall to flowering. Long nights signal dormancy, shorter nights growth. For some trees it determines when to make seeds, for others when to draw sugars back into the trunk. These are not reactions, they are rhythms, ancient, refined, essential. This knowing is not fast, it is not even conscious, but it is sure. You could cover a tree in artificial light, and it would be confused, its rhythms disrupted, its blooming delayed or hastened, its rest unsettled. Trees feel the light we leave on at night. Street lamps, windows, security floods. To us they are convenience, to the tree they are confusion. They disrupt the count, add hours to night, delay the signal that says now rest, now bloom, now release. Still, even in the cleanest night, far from cities and glow, the branches need not see stars to feel them. The dark itself is enough. The absence of certain wavelengths, the angle of moonlight, the coolness of the breeze, these become data, inputs that trees gather slowly, steadily, through the open skin of their leaves and the tips of their twigs. Each night is another notch in the invisible calendar. Each hour another mark in the slow-ticking of the forest's clock. Some species respond with remarkable precision. The date palm knows exactly when to flower in response to changing night length. The cotton plant, native to tropical regions, tracks the equatorial shift with elegance, aligning its growth to the light balance it evolved within. Even temperate oaks, those patient towers of northern forests, wait until just the right balance of dark and light to begin new growth. It is not about temperature alone. It is not about moisture. It is about time. Time held in branches, in buds, in the unseen mathematics of light and shadow. And this is where the stars matter most, not because their light feeds the trees, but because they are reliable. They turn above us with precision, sweeping across the sky in their ancient path. The branches, lifted toward them, may not reach to touch, but they stretch in the direction of their signal. In ancient myths, trees and stars were often linked. the world tree mirrored in the sky, roots in the heavens. Science, in its quiet way, shows this may be more true than we ever imagined. Even the movement of sap is influenced by the turning of the earth, by the lunar pull that also stirs tides. Studies have found that the thickness of tree trunks subtly shifts during lunar phases, a gentle swell and release, as if the tree is breathing with the moon. And in that breath, in that slow rising and falling of fluid, the branches listen. Not with ears, with motion, with chemistry, with time. At the ends of branches, flowers begin in darkness. Before they bloom, they build. They measure. They wait. And their decision to open is made at night, often in response to a certain number of dark hours accumulated. The night is not empty. It is full of signals, full of instructions, full of stars that speak through their absence as much as their light. Some trees, like the night-blooming jasmine or the moonflower vine, would take this relationship further. They do not wait for day to open. They open only in the dark, when pollinators like moths and bats emerge. Their fragrance rises into the cool air, strong and sweet, carried through the forest to find what cannot be seen. Their blossoms are timed not for visibility, but for touch, for scent, for the whisper of wings. Their branches, still counting, still listening, know exactly when the hour has come. And all the while the stars continue their arc, and the branches hold their pose. You may not see them move, but they adjust slightly to wind, to moisture, to temperature. And beneath their bark the buds are changing, cells are dividing, sugars are being sent. Night is not a pause for them, it is a conversation. In this conversation the stars are constant companions. They turn above, and the trees respond below, not in spectacle, in structure, in the quiet rearrangement of internal plans, in the shifting of growth, in the slow emergence of a new shoot. You will not see it tonight, but tomorrow or the next day you will find a change, a swelling, a lengthening, a single new leaf. It began here in the dark when the branches counted the stars and decided it was time. So if you walk beneath trees at night and look up through their arms at the sky, remember this, you are not alone in your wonder. The tree is watching too, not with eyes, but with time, not with desire, but with presence. And somewhere within its limbs it is holding the memory of light, the length of shadow, the count of nights. The forest is always counting, not in days, in stars. Now let's go deeper, not into the soil, but into the architecture of the branches themselves, into the slow geometry of how they hold time. Each branch is a map of decisions made not in haste, but through seasons of light and dark, warmth and cold, flood and drought. They grow outward, not randomly, but with intent shaped by memory. A tree does not reach blindly. Its limbs extend into the spaces where light has touched, where shadow has pulled back, where the night has been kind. And as it grows, the tree remembers, in curve, in angle, in texture. These memories are not stored in words, they are kept in rings, in scars, in the weight of each new bud. A branch remembers where last year's light came from. It remembers which winds broke its tips. It remembers which nights were longest, which dawns brought frost. It adjusts, not dramatically, but patiently. A new twig grows just a little to the left. A bud emerges just a few days earlier. This is what it means to count the stars, to gather time not with numbers but with change. At night, while the world sleeps or turns away in haste, branches continue their quiet calibration. Tiny adjustments in hormone levels shift within the cells. Auxins gather, regulating growth, cytokinins balance, directing cell division. These chemicals move in pulses in response to dark and light, and the branch listens. It does not respond like a switch flipping on and off. It moves like a tide, slow, sure, and steady. Photoperiodic response, that elegant sensitivity to night length, is not a passive trait. It is deeply active. It guides when branches begin their real work, not just growing but preparing. Before a single new shoot appears in spring, the branch has already decided. During the winter, buds sleep, but even in that sleep, changes happen. Dormancy is not stillness, it is preparation. Inside each bud, a structure is being built, cells forming leaves, flowers, stems. When the right number of nights has passed, when the right light returns, that bud will break open. But the decision is made long before, in the silence of 1,000 starlit hours. Some trees can track this change with uncanny precision. Black locusts, poplars, willows, all of them use the length of night to time their leaf out and leaf fall. This prevents them from budding too early, risking frost or waiting too long, wasting daylight. But beyond safety, this timing creates harmony. When many trees respond to the same signals, forests begin to move together. Leaves unfold across valleys in the same week. Blossoms appear in harmony, a quiet synchronization guided by the stars. And what of evergreens, whose needles stay through the winter, whose branches do not drop their leaves? They too are counting. They may not shed their needles, but they still change inside. Their growth pauses, their buds tighten, their chemistry shifts to resist cold, and when the nights begin to shorten, they resume, slowly, deliberately. A new shoot here, a cone beginning there. Their clocks are ticking even if their faces never change. Branches, in their stillness, are also bridges. They carry messages from root to leaf and back again. Water rises through xylem in the day, but even at night, branches host the gentle downward flow of phloem, sugars made during sunlight returning to the heart of the tree. Alongside these sugars move signals, hormones, defense compounds, instructions shaped by darkness. A wound sends out alerts. A chill triggers new preparations. All of it happens quietly, pulsing beneath the bark. Even as the stars shift above them, branches hold their pose. They do not wave unless wind moves them. But within, they are filled with quiet urgency. They are always preparing, always responding. When a tree is young, its branches form quickly, reaching for light in all directions. But as it ages, the tree refines. It becomes more selective. It remembers. It grows in ways that reflect not just where light is, but where it has been. Old branches may bear the marks of past winters, ice breaks, insect scars, sunburnt bark. These do not stop growth. They shape it. The tree adapts. This adaptation is part of the tree's wisdom. It does not chase every possibility. It chooses. It learns from each year's rhythm. In drought, it shortens its shoots. In years of abundance, it lengthens. The stars may look the same, but the world below changes, and the tree responds not with panic, but with pattern. It builds resilience into its limbs, and as it does, it shapes the forest. The way branches grow affects everything. The light beneath them, the rain that reaches the ground, the paths of animals that pass between trunks. A tree that leans a little west changes the soil on its east side. A branch that splits into two makes room for birds to nest, for moss to gather, for snow to fall in patterns. These choices begin in the night, in the information gathered from darkness, from air, from silence. Stars do not only mark time, they carve the spaces where life can grow. In some species, like the silver birch, branches grow towards starlight with a kind of slow yearning. In others, like the red maple, they form thick, rounded limbs that stretch outward like the arms of someone embracing the night. Each species has its pattern, but each pattern is shaped by time. You can look at a branch and see age, but you can also see the story of light, how long it has waited, how far it has reached, how softly it has grown. When storms come, some branches fall, not because they are weak, but because they are wise. A branch lets go when it must. It makes space for new growth. It lightens the tree, it opens the canopy, and in the soft decay of that fallen limb, new life begins. Fungi, insects, seedlings nourished by rot. Even in letting go, the branch is generous. So what does it mean to say that branches count the stars? It means they remember night. It means they grow not just for the day, but through the dark. It means they stretch in harmony with the turning of the sky, guided by signals older than our calendars. It means they know when to wait, when to grow, and when to hold still. It means that even in silence, even in seeming stillness, there is awareness. And if you walk beneath the branches on a clear night and look up, you may see them differently. Not as shadows, but as listeners. Not as structure, but as story. You may feel your own body slow, your own breath fall into rhythm with theirs, and you may realize, you too are part of this quiet counting. You too carry memory in your skin. You too rise toward light, but learn in darkness. The stars above you turn, the branches above you hold, and somewhere in the quiet between them, a rhythm is shared. It does not need to be named, only felt. Now the sky begins to change, the edge of the dark begins to pale, and the stars, once bright companions, retreat gently behind the soft curtain of morning. Their counting is done for now, but the branches remember. They do not shift as the light arrives. They do not wave in greeting. They remain still, not unmoved, but fulfilled. The night has spoken, and in its quiet language, it has told the tree everything it needed to know, what to begin, what to pause, what to carry forward into the light. As dawn stretches across the forest, the work of the branches changes. No longer are they listening for the rhythms of darkness. Now they reach to meet the warmth, to welcome the energy that will feed every cell within. But even in this new rhythm, the memory of the night lingers, the timing of the buds, the shape of the leaf, the readiness of the flower. These things were decided in the dark. They unfold in light, but they are born of shadow. A single branch may hold 100 memories. Each bud swelling now with spring carries within it a map of seasons past. How long the nights once were, how early the frost arrived, how much light returned and when. All of these are factors in the decision to open. And when a bud does open, when it uncurls its tight form into leaf or blossom, it is not just a response to warmth. It is a trust, a faith that the counting was correct, that the stars did not lie, and the stars do not lie. Their movement is ancient, precise, as sure as the spin of the earth beneath our feet. Branches that reach into that sky, even without eyes, feel their turning. They know when Orion rises and when it fades. They know when the nights begin to grow shorter, when the balance of light tips towards spring. Not because they see it, because they feel it, in the length of dark, in the temperature of shadow, in the cool shape of midnight air. Even trees that grow in isolation, in yards, in cities, far from wild forests, still keep count. Their branches still hold time, they still track night, even when the stars are dimmed by the glow of human life. It takes longer, perhaps. The signals are less clear, but the tree is patient, its rhythm is deep, it waits for what it needs, and when the signal arrives, even faintly, it begins. And in this waiting there is wisdom. The branch does not rush. It does not bloom because of pressure. It blooms because the moment is right, because all signs align, because the stars have given permission. And in that alignment the branch is free, free to open, free to stretch, free to grow, but also free to hold back. Some buds never open, some branches never stretch, they rest because the tree knows when to conserve. Even in abundance there is restraint. This is part of the elegance of branching, not just their beauty but their balance. A branch is never too much. It is exactly what is needed. When wind pulls too hard, the tree learns to thicken the joints, to distribute weight more evenly. When snow bends limbs too low, the tree adapts, strengthens, adjusts. It never seeks to dominate the sky, only to reach what is necessary, only to answer the invitation of the light. And when a branch dies, it does so quietly. It dries, it hollows. It offers its body to beetles, to fungi, to birds looking for shelter. Even in death, it gives. The memory of the stars it once counted does not vanish. It becomes part of the forest floor, nourishing roots, feeding the next cycle. What the branch gathered in silence becomes part of what the tree will carry forward. There is no waste, only continuation. There is a kind of humility in this, a willingness to grow, to reach, to wait, and to fall without pride. A branch does not insist, it offers. Its very shape is one of surrender. Open arms, curved lines, a gentle persistence toward the sky. And if you sit beneath one long enough, especially in the soft stillness of night, you might begin to feel that shape in yourself. The quiet patience, the open readiness, the strength without aggression. And this is perhaps the greatest gift of the branches, not just their shade, not just their beauty, but the way they model a different way of being. A way that is in rhythm with the world, that listens before acting, that grows because the time is right, not because the world demands it, that reaches without needing to grasp. So the next time you find yourself beneath the trees after sunset, look up, let your eyes adjust. See how the branches carve space from sky, how they cradle stars in their forks, how they hold still, even as the world turns. You're watching something ancient, something still counting, still measuring, still believing in the return of light. And when you walk away, into your home, into your sleep, know that above you, the branches will keep counting. They will track the stars even when clouds hide them. They will hold space for new growth even when you cannot see it. And one night, when the season turns, they will decide gently, silently, that the moment has come. A bud will swell, a leaf will open, a flower will unfurl, because the stars told them, because the dark was long enough, because they listened, because they waited, because they remembered.